Well, hello,
Well,
Ali.
hi
Well,
Maggie, we're back.
yeah, and we've managed. I think this is our first global
It is.
global video that we've been able to do since you left Glasgow and went back to Australia. So it's
Yeah,
fabulous to be on here.
I know it's fabulous
Um,
doing it again. So yeah, I've missed it.
Me too. But we've been busy in the
Yeah,
meantime because we've been doing the Substack, getting our Facebook page, our joint Facebook page set up. Um, but the Substack, so to maybe start there, because you put a poem on the other day. I think it was called "Give Me a Poem,"
yeah,
and um, I was not out. I mean, I had seen the poem before in your third collection,
yeah.
but it was just knockout the way you put it on. And I thought maybe our viewers would enjoy hearing you read it, just a part of the start of the poem, maybe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. And so I guess the brief context is that we had been discussing um other places where we had seen that question being asked, why poetry? And we both responded to that on Substack, but this was the poem that I put on there. So this is I'm just going to read two or three stanzas. This is Give Me a Poem, with a dotted line tattooed across its throat saying, cut here. Give me a poem with its knickers at its ankles, skirt hoiked up around its waist, running bare-arsed through the shitstorm of this world. Give me a poem that smokes two fags simultaneously and sucks on a bottle of Jack. Give me a poem that gorges on trans fats and kale and lives in perfect harmony with its contradictions. Give me a poem that sings through the bedlam of the asylum and the solitary confinement of this fucking jail. And then it goes on. So that's just
Ah,
a little half of it.
brilliant. I mean, the energy in that poem, the energy that you're able to bring into poems is quite astounding. It makes even when it's brilliant to hear you reading it, but even when one is reading off the page or off the screen, there is such an energy. The words are just leaping off the page. The images are
Oh,
so
thanks,
vibrant.
Maggie. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons I love your work. But we sometimes we chat about self-doubt.
Yeah.
And when I hear you read and read on the page a poem like that from you, which is so confident, so passionate, so daring. I mean, you really dare in your poetry.
Mm.
I wonder if we could maybe revisit this idea of self-doubt, because the poem doesn't seem to have any self-doubt.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And I think in the early days everybody suffers from a bit of self-doubt. And if I think about this, back in 2008 when I first published, it wasn't poetry, it was memoir, but it wasn't that I wasn't confident with the work. For some reason, if the work is good enough for me, it's good enough. It has to be good enough for me. But back in 2008, I'd submitted the manuscript for publication, and the minute I submitted it, I was so racked with self-doubt.
Mm.
I was just, and it wasn't that I didn't believe in the work. It was almost like the self-doubt was, would I be accepted into this world of literature, coming from the space that I was coming from, which was no experience in writing and, you know, just an ordinary Joe just going about their business, making a living. So, and then when I moved into poetry, again, if I'm right when I'm writing, if I'm feeling doubtful, it's because a line or the poem itself is not working. And so I will fix that. Do you know what I mean? So I would never send that out and hope that I would get away with it. I would never send it out unless I was so happy myself with every single line that I've written. So yeah, so the self-doubt will arise, but it's more kind of these, Ali, these lines are not working. What are you doing? Nobody can ever see these. And so And that's not to say that I don't
Yeah.
do the workout and then people might think nothing of the lines. It doesn't matter. It's all about pleasing myself always.
Yes. And I mean, I think all of us earlier in our careers have done a bit of that where you think, oh God, I know there's something not right there, but oh, I'm
Yeah.
probably being over. Sometimes you think, is it me? Have I
Yeah,
looked at this so
that's
much?
right.
Have I looked at the poem so much that I can't see it anymore?
Yeah.
And I think it's that thing though, where the where it's not self-doubt, it's self-criticism that is needed. Um,
Yeah.
I think I would say that I know too when I've written something which really works. On the whole, although I do like it when someone else says that too.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
And,
That's
and that and that does boost me a lot, and
yeah,
because of various things that have gone in my life for the last decade or so,
yeah,
including, you know, I've mentioned before, ill health and
yeah,
knocks to the sense of self and who you are.
yeah,
It's it's hard. It's probably quite hard to write from that place of that kind of self-doubt. Should
yeah,
I be doing it at all? But
yeah,
once you've got a poem with where you know you're onto a good idea, a strong idea, and an original idea. And I think that for me is very, very important. I
yeah,
would have self if I thought, oh my God, if I just gone and done something that's like a lot of other poems are out there or a specific poet's
yeah,
poetry. I don't go for the let's try to write like the poet that you admire. Do that as an exercise, but please,
yeah, yeah,
please,
yeah, of
please
course.
don't create poems like that and then send them out
Yeah,
because that's exercise. Separate it
yeah,
from
yeah,
the work.
that's it.
But
Because then there's that other side of things, where we can be as confident as we like with our own work. We send it out and we still get rejected, you know. And so then there's the self-doubt that could arise from the rejections pouring in. It'd be easy to be drowned in that avalanche at times, and to sort of be gasping for breath.
yes, and I
So
think the pressure is so, so strong on all the magazines now and on the competitions. I mean, the numbers entering competitions, I think we've touched on this before, that you have to remember that it's some of it is closer to buying a lottery ticket. I don't think it's as basic as that because obviously the stuff which gets through, one would hope, it is all crafted, but there's a stage at the end of that process where they'll have more poems than they can put in the magazine. And I often just wonder if they take those ones and throw them up in there and see which ones land face up.
Yeah,
Uh,
I guess when a judge ends
okay.
up with, sorry, but I guess when a judge ends up with a few poems, I mean, I guess it can be difficult to choose out of that. You hear that, that they had a short list of 10 and, it can just be eeny, meeny, miny, mo to choose one because they're all fabulous or however that goes. But I think one of the other things that I did early on when I was receiving the obligatory rejections was that it does something to me where I just kind of go, oh, fuck you, what would you know? And I don't know what that's arrogant or it's something, but it's what has gotten me through a lot of the times. I just, oh, fuck you, because otherwise you could easily sort of start having your sort of sense of self and sense of ability eroded a little bit. I mean, nobody on the planet wants to be rejected, but I would just counter that sometimes by writing an imaginary letter to the editor who rejected me. And it felt so great, you know.
Yeah, but you've done that as a poem. I know other poets have done similar, but you again in your third book, Letter to the Sea, you you actually have a letter to
Yeah, yeah,
replying
that's right.
to
Yeah.
right. I mean, there was yes, I do
Oh
get
no.
rejections. There was a rejection I got recently, and I was just looking at it, and you would be talking about this today, and it starts, and this is from a pretty major UK magazine, a major UK magazine. We are so grateful you entrusted us with your precious work. And maybe it's the working class girl in me,
Yeah,
But I do actually feel that if you're going to run a poetry magazine, whoever wrote that, if you're going to run a poetry magazine or a literature magazine, it would be good to know that you actually really appreciated what words are saying. Um, they weren't in, they're not really so grateful.
yeah.
I didn't entrust them with my precious
Oh,
work. Precious work is mine. It's still here. I've not handed over a
yeah,
living baby that they've looked after for a few
yeah,
weeks while I've gone off and done something else.
yeah.
You entrusted us with your precious work, and come on, precious.
I
I
know.
mean,
Come on.
he,
Let's
or
not.
maybe my name is called Precious.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I know
Anyway,
it's true, isn't it? And and you can tell that someone has crafted that in order to kind of lessen the blow somehow. But it just kind of reeks of insincerity at the end of that, I think.
yeah, that's the problem with it. It reeks of insincerity, and that's what I was trying to unpick there. Because these words like precious, entrusted, so grateful, they have meanings.
Yeah.
They, I would rather this just sent me quite thank you for sending us your work. We're sorry that on this occasion
Yeah.
your work wasn't chosen.
Yeah,
You
I mean
know,
the other side of that coin to the precious comment was one that I got once, and it just says, "Dear Alison Whitelock, our editors have made their selection. Yours was not selected." It was so brief, I was astonished. So,
yeah.
whilst, there's somewhere in between those two, the precious and the thingo. But
Well, that one did follow up with we hope you'll I think one or two of them now say we'll hope you'll continue writing and you think well really that's that's for me but it's well out of your hands and
yeah, no.
uh, it's it's quite amusing that they think again that I found that condescending actually.
Yeah,
We
no,
hope you'll
it is for
oh,
someone,
your reaction is
yeah,
going to be so much that I am going to be crushed. This little poet that is going to be crushed by your rejection. Oh, and please subscribe to our magazine.
yeah, consider it.
Mm.
But what about self-doubt for you, Maggie? Because you've been writing poetry for a long time. You've held so many positions of, in the arts and literature, and you are the maker of Stirling, the writer in residence at the Glasgow Museum of Art, and so many, and many other places. So we all sit back here and think, Maggie mustn't feel self-doubt, do you?
Well, well, I do, but I mean, it's usually because I'm just not getting into the flow. It's because I've taken too long a break.
Yeah,
And it's, well, maybe I've written everything that I was
yeah,
needing to like, because I do think the writing should come from quite a deep place inside. I'd, although one might use things one sees in the world around you, use them as triggers or as diving boards to go home
yeah,
dive off. So you an image or something. Like once I saw a bit graffiti on a wall, and it just
yeah,
really it just hit me. There's a poem. So you do that type, but and but if you're having bother getting the ideas to come,
yeah,
that's more where the doubt is. Not can I
yeah,
craft this into a poem? I think most of the time now I know that's about hard work, as you say. And I
yeah,
know it's about raising my own uh, bar on
yeah,
myself, particularly not repeating what I've done before. We all have our own little tropes
yeah,
and sometimes it takes me a while. But the main thing is original. That's it. The self-doubt is, can I continue to be original? I think when I came on the poetry scene, my voice was a bit unpolished, but it was original
yeah,
and it was different from a lot of other things that were going on. So it's that thing though of just you should have more self-doubt if you're pushing yourself to go further.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's right. And that ties into the David Bowie quote that we talked about before, where he says, if you're feeling comfortable in the area where you're working, and I'm apologizing for repeating this from the last show, but I think it's a great quote to drop in again here. If you are comfortable in the area and in the voice that you're working in, you're not in the right place. Wade out to
Yes.
sea a little bit until your feet can't touch the sand. Then you're in the place to do something original. And I love that. And I think that's perhaps what you're alluding to.
Yes, because what if I wade? I mean, I think I said this before, but what if you wade out further and you drown?
Yeah.
So there's self-doubt. Am I up to this task? But that
Yeah.
again, I think is about at the different stages in your writing career, realizing, as I say, that you have to uh, push forward and break new ground for yourself, and it's always for yourself,
Mm.
really. Because I don't want to just become very good at writing a certain type of poem. And
Yeah.
then I think that's a rut. I think you've got
Yeah.
to kind of get out of the rut.
Yeah,
And
because
it's, and some
the rut is not enjoyable for the poet either, you know.
no,
And if the poet's not enjoying it or feeling excited, I think, to get it out and to share this new thing, then why would you expect a reader to be excited about it, I guess?
maybe the rut is comfortable.
Yeah,
You
it is.
know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
it's the old slippers. But really, when your slippers get to that point, it's better
Yeah, yeah.
better than
Throw them out
prime.
into Marks and Spencer's, can't you?
So.
But we were also talking about recently. Like I don't normally submit to prizes, but I did in the last couple of months, and I selected them based on who the judge was, and then I looked up the judge and I see what kind of poems they themselves write, and I thought, okay, I'll submit to this one and this one because I might stand a chance, but I was surprised to get some of the rejections back, and which talked about the judge. It wasn't the judge that judge potentially didn't read my work because they
Yeah,
said rejection. The
uh-huh.
panel of editors in the competition haven't chosen yours, and I just found that odd. So maybe I'm naive, but obviously the poems go into a big kind of maybe slush pile, and various people get to read some, and then they must make their selections, and then. But so I was a bit surprised and a bit disappointed by that. But maybe I'm a bit, clearly green behind the
Well,
ears.
if
If you
there are that
advertise that judge, if you advertise that's the judge, surely,
That's the problem with it. The problem is
yeah,
not the panel of editors as much
no,
as they have advertised it as that judge. You're expecting that judge to read your poems. And I was offered recently and accepted to judge a prize. And I think the organizer was quite surprised when I said, oh, um, uh, the organizers offered to sift and then just send the judges the final 100 or so,
yeah,
or 50. I think maybe, I think some places it's only 50 that get passed on. And I said, no, I said, if I'm going to judge this, I want to read every poem. In fact, in the past, I'm not sure that I would do it now because I think I have become much better at reading poems on screen. But in the past, when I've done that type of thing or editing, I print them all out and it takes forever.
yeah,
But actually, so that I can, because that's also a very practical way of making your pile of, oh, I'm very
yeah,
interested in
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Oh, I know that not anywhere near polished enough or finished enough or crafted enough. And then the middle pile of, oh, well, I'm going to have to really read these again, at least once, to make sure that none of them should be in the top pile. So
yeah,
it's it, so when it's a panel though, fine, do with the panel, be really upfront that it's a panel that's going to read
yeah.
it, and the panel judge will be getting a name. Tell the truth. Say, I'm terrible, haven't I? Tell the truth.
You're
Say
terrible.
what number. Say what not. For me, that's an expectation of just being fair and professionalism. Tell us how many the judge is reading. If the judge is only getting the final 10, I want to know that.
Yeah,
And would really quite like to know how they select the editorial panels.
Yeah,
And
that's
I do actually, you know,
yeah,
um, and I think they deserve credit, whoever the editorial panel is. So they should get their names, on
yeah,
there somewhere.
yeah.
But it's an odd one with the prizes. Say it's such a lottery.
There's a lot.
Uh-huh. Uh,
I was just going
mhm.
to come back to our self-doubt again for a second, because I know that there will be people who are watching who do suffer from self-doubt when they're writing,
Yes.
and um and I wondered if there's anything we could say about that. You know, ways that I've talked to people about overcoming self-doubt is one of my favorite things is to, when you feel the self-doubt knocking while you're writing. Let's imagine you're in the room writing and the self-doubt is in the corridor banging on the door. My advice and
Mhm.
my suggestion has never been to lock the door and keep it out. It's to open the door and just say, look, come in,
Uh-huh.
sit down, I'm writing. But, you're going to have to give me 10 minutes because I need to I need to finish this poem or whatever. But sit there quietly, take your feet off the coffee table and let me finish this thing. And I've applied that to myself as well at times when, I don't know, I just had that kind of feeling that having it in the room with me was, easier than trying to keep it out, and also, I just apply that same kind of thing to people who are writing generally. Like, conditions are probably never going to be perfect for the day that you sit down and write, so if you're embarking on this journey of trying to make sure everything is good, and I now feel supremely confident I can now sit down and write my book or my poem, then you could wait for a very long time to write the poem, right? So my suggestion
No, no,
my
yeah,
suggestion is
I'm trying.
also that to sort of write despite the self-doubt, right in
Yes.
spite of it, it's
Uh-huh.
always going to be there. Or it might
Uh-huh.
not always be there. I
I
don't
can
know that it ever goes away completely for
see
people.
it glowering. I can see the self-doubt now glowering at you moodily,
Yeah,
saying, he's not even
yeah,
bothering about me. How infuriating. But I think too, when I think back to when I was younger, my self-doubt was very, very much coming from so I have experienced it. But it's very, very much coming from what is someone like me allowed to write
yeah,
poetry?
yeah.
Uh,
So that real
or
working class kind of perspective or position.
Yes, very, very, very much that working class thing.
Yeah,
People like me don't do things like this. Uh,
yeah,
People who grew up in a council house like mine with three of us in the one bedroom, and just very, very modest, and almost no books. what I don't know quite how I ended up here. So there was a lot of self-doubt about having a place in this world. And I think it's great that in I mean, I started writing mid to late 80s, and in the 90s in Scotland, there was a real push for working class voices to come through. And no doubt I benefited from that at the time.
yeah,
Uh, and you have to just it can be daunting when you feel everyone else is more established, they know what they're doing, that they've often when I read the stories of other poets that I've really liked or writers, and the childhood is a lot more preparing them to do what they want, to do what they want. My childhood was, I felt my parents were great, but I felt I was getting prepared for work. You wanted to never be caught in poverty.
yeah,
Um, you had to get a job that was going to keep you safe, and they didn't want me to have to, scrimp and save the way that they had. Um, and always just not much over the breadline, just so. So the self-doubt was very much about me as a person being allowed to do it. I think I got such joy out of the first couple of poems that I wrote within weeks of attending a group, and
yeah,
one of them was then and the Scotsman, that did make me
Was that the
feel,
one? Was that
oh,
your father's dungarees?
the Father's Dungarees was, I wrote the two in the one night, my Father's Dungarees, and the one which was published was about being at a Tupperware party. I did say I
Oh
was
yeah,
worth.
yeah. Yeah, that was in the Scotsman. I mean, that is an amazing thing to happen to your first poem.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was lifted from an anthology that had gone in that the group I was in had published, and there was the article about the anthology because it was a women's group and it was about women, uh, you know, uh, young mums, etc., taking up their pens and writing, and that was about 1985. So
Yeah,
that was quite a
yeah,
while. But
yeah.
that, but after that, and then my father's dungarees, I read that at a miners' welfare event for the striking miners of 84 of
Yeah,
84, the wives of the striking miners actually.
yeah.
Uh, uh, I was asked to read, so that was my first ever reading, and there were about 200 people in the miners'
Oh,
welfare at Stirling.
amazing.
And and the poem took the roof off, so you can
Wow.
imagine, and
Yeah,
they wanted it to be behind the bar. So these are the things. So really banish the self-doubt about who are you to be doing this. If
yeah,
you've got something to say it.
yeah,
And the thing with me was I didn't even know I had these things to say,
yeah.
but the writing
Right.
and the writing can be great for that. It can be great for being supportive. I've never been one to allow. I've never had any. No, I don't think I've ever had, apart from that very first group, I've never had anybody workshop or discuss my
Hmm.
work for me to take it away and make changes. Obviously, I've tutored so much that I've actually run workshops like that. And I just always say to people, though, if it doesn't sit right with you, the suggestion, you are the poet, you take
Yeah,
responsibility for it. And if you feel that's the way you want it and you don't understand the reasoning that you've maybe been given, then the final decision is yours. Don't
yeah,
be scared of that. So that's again about self-confidence, which is
yeah,
presumably the other side of the doubt.
yeah. Absolutely.
Develop your self-confidence by pushing yourself, by setting yourself a little uh, quite small and achievable targets.
Hmm.
Could you go out and read an open mic night?
Yeah,
You take your just the doing of it. It's not
yeah,
you don't have to get a fabulous response, and you probably will get a good response, although that's something you've got to be careful of as well. But just the actual build your resilience by making yourself do things that are actually, well, it's back
yeah.
to just out of your
Yeah.
depth.
Yeah, and I
So
think also, those kinds of things are great. And I mean, I meet a lot of people whose main issue or stumbling block is that they don't have time to write, And so one of the little things that you might suggest to that person is just write for 5 minutes a day. If that's all you can manage, it's getting something down, And even if you
oh,
don't know what you really want to write right now, well, what happens is the act of writing a thought on the page will lead you to discover what it is you really think about that thing because you just go deeper and deeper and deeper, don't you, when you actually start to
well,
press the pen on the page.
exactly. And in fact, that's the way my poem that won the Wigtown International Open Poetry Competition
Yeah,
last year was
yeah,
written, because I hadn't been writing for quite some time, and it was sunny, and I sat up out in the garden, and the sun was really, really beating down, and that comes into the poem. And essentially, I just felt as though the sun was hammering in my head,
yeah,
as if my head eggshell and the spoon. And that
yeah.
was it. And the whole poem grew from there. So that's the other thing. Remember, you don't need the whole poem in your head. You need the seed.
You
And
don't
you
need
need
the
to
whole
nurture that.
cow. You don't need the whole cow. You just need a pint of milk. But Maggie, we're running out of time. We're running out of time, sadly.
That is sad because yeah, there was just
Over
one
you
last
are.
thing. That's quickly and it's called sometimes I've used it, and someone else, it was a woman who's a composer who told me she did this, a very well-known composer, and she calls it the Pomodoro method, so I don't know if that's a well-known term. And she gets a timer, the type, the
Oh yeah,
Pomodoro, I think for tomatoes, the type that you used to get in the cooker and you set it. And she gives herself 10 minutes, And if she can afford another 10 minutes at the end of that, even if she's not written anything new, set it for another 10. So you're actually just saying, I'm just going to
Yeah,
sit here and
yeah, I
have it.
like that. I like it.
It's, I've known people to have good results from it.
Yeah,
And it's not the big fear of the blank
yeah.
page. It's,
It's
oh, I
that's
can
right.
do this.
It's not.
It's, and always remember, whatever you write on the page, you might, you don't need to show that to
No,
anyone.
that's right. And
And they're right for you saying it all the times, but I'm strong on that too. Write for yourself
mm,
and don't let anybody in your household look over your shoulder and go, oh, what's that? Your notebooks are private. Don't let anybody else in them.
yeah, and absolutely. I agree. But yeah, so just on yeah, I think I was going to say something else, but now I've completely forgotten. So that'll need to be for the next show.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we did
Well, that's what
another
I was
we
trying to say just really quickly. It was, that some people equate a morning or an hour or half an hour or 15 minutes of writing as it needing to be good writing. But a half an hour or a 15 minutes of bad writing is still 15 minutes of writing. It is not always going to be good. And so if you just keep chipping away at that, it more becomes about the habit and the method and the just keeping doing it, keep the muscle working, keep the muscle working. Great things
yes.
will come. I really believe that. So, I think that's another thing which is worthwhile.
And you've just reminded me that you sometimes, I don't think I've said this on the Maggie and Ali poetry show before, but you have poems that you call brown bananas.
I do. Well, it's kind of this. I'll need to go really quickly because we're going to get but it's this idea that the idea of writing is like there's this big fruit bowl and it's full of fruit and and you're a bit blindfolded, but you have to dip your hand into this fruit bowl and see what you pull out, and that's kind of like what a day of writing can be. You've pulled out a juicy mango, you've had a great day. Other days you can be writing away and actually you've pulled out it was a black banana, it wasn't a great day of writing. It was, it wasn't worth eating. But we keep on going back to this fruit bowl. I do. And just always in
Uh-huh.
search of the juicy mangoes. But they're not always there and they're not always in season. And
Yeah.
you have to take
Yeah.
the mushy pears and the, dried up grapes and whatever. Some writing days are dried up grapes, some are black
Yeah.
bananas, but some are deliciously juicy mangoes. So
Yeah. And so now we've got the pomodoro, the tomato timer, and we've got the fruit bowl. So everyone should be all set to
that's
create
it.
some.
Get the timers on, everybody. Let's get writing.
Oh,
Well, I think we shall have
so,
to end it here, Maggie.
yep. Well, it's been lovely
It's
talking to you about poetry again,
been
Ali.
lovely, and we'll be doing it again soon.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
shall go looking for my moldy old fruit bowl.
Okay, Maggie. See ya.
Bye just now then. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.